Hey, I'm Sid, and this is my first official devlog for my game, My Babysitter's a Monster Hunter. Today, I'm just going to talk about the art I've made, as well as go over the basic spawning system I've created in Unity. This is a little less content heavy than I'd like, because of the fact that I'm preparing to start a game jam and record it for next week's video, so this is only about a day of content. I hope you enjoy. So, besides the fact that I complain a lot about how bad I am at art, I figured I need some basic assets to get started on the game. So the first thing I set around doing was hopping into my photo editor and making a couple of art assets. The first thing I started out with was a protagonist, or basically the player character. This is going to change in the future, but for right now, I just decided to make a pretty simple looking kid, and it took a little time, but I figured out that it's something I was happy with, and yeah, this is our little dude. After that, I wasted no time and decided to make a couple other things just to have a little bit of a scenery for the game, and I made a TV stand. This took me a couple of tries, despite being pretty basic, but it was really nothing crazy, and I thought it added a kind of a nice feel because I wanted to start off with like a living room. After that, I made a trophy stand with the feet pointing inwards because, you know, cabinet's a little shy. So with the big stuff down, I moved on to making just a really generic box, which I would use for basically a one-size-fit-all type container. That way I wouldn't have to make art for all the different rooms before I had the base mechanics of the game down. So with the art out of the way, I started getting into implementing features that I've been looking forward to creating for a while now. First thing I did was create a pretty basic inventory pop-up. I just created a really bad looking sort of 4-panel box that I was going to use for the inventory. I didn't get around to actually having items that were found in the container spawn in the inventory, although I did get around to making items spawn, which I'll talk about in a second. But as you can see here, I added colliders to all the containers, and walking into them basically just makes the inventory pop up in the center. I'm going to have to offset it near the player so it isn't just in the center at all times, because that looks a little gross, but that's something I can do later. For right now, it's functional. In the next devlog, I'll probably have items spawning into the columns, or the little cells, which I don't think should be terribly hard to implement, but don't quote me on that because I've heard it can be kind of challenging to get the UI spawning correctly. But I am going to show you guys how I managed to create those containers, and it's something that I've been looking forward to talking about because the containers are going to be such a big part of the game, because a big part of the game is scavenging for household items to make traps. So creating that is a big part, and I think I did a pretty good job at implementing it, and I'm excited to go over it with you guys. So to show you what I mean about the item spawning, you can see here that we've got in the scene the chest that I was talking about earlier, and if we walk on over to it and kind of bump up into it, the UI pops up. But also a little bit in the console pops up, and if we zoom in, you can see that 3 things spawn. Those are all kitchen items, essentially. And the kitchen items are something unique to kitchen containers, so only things that are kitchen containers are made. If we make a new one and scroll down a little bit, we can set this from a kitchen container to a living room container. And so if we do that and then hop back over to our editor and hit play, bumping into the living room container gives us different little items, a pencil and a laptop to be specific. Then going back over here, it's a little bit wonky with the collision. We can get back to the kitchen items versus the living room items. So that's not crazy exciting, but I am going to go ahead and show you guys the code that I use to kind of like create that. Again, it's only something that you might be interested in if you're really technical. I'll try not to be a total bore while I'm explaining it. But overall, I think it's pretty cool. So if we go over to the code, we've got a couple of fields here. Fields are basically properties of a class. Looking at it, we've got a name, the container name. We've also got a container type, and I'll go over that in a sec, and an item. And I'm meant to make more than one item because the container will have only one item, but I'll do that later. And then we also have a field called spawn items, which is an object, or a class, sorry. And then we've got a spawner, which is a reference to that. And so if we go down here, we've got a numerator, and these are just types of a container. Kitchen, living room, bathroom, and basement. Those are all types of containers. So if we look at these, there are ways to do this that don't use enumerators. Like if you want to use a string and have the type be set to like a string, you could do that, but that isn't really great for readability, and I think it's just better if you do it with an enumerator. I didn't really know this existed until maybe like a year ago, so they've been very helpful since then. This is also the biggest part of the container class, I'd say. This is what spawns the item into the container, and this is what like kind of prints it out, the develog. but the spawner takes a parameter, which is the container type, and then if we go over to that, we can see that the, see, I don't love how this kind of came out, but we take the array list item types, and then going through it, the if and else if statements are a little messy. There are definitely ways to make that a little cleaner, especially because I only have 2, and I'm going to need 4 plus to kind of finish off the code. But there are definitely ways. I'm going to refactor this soon enough so it isn't so messy. But so essentially what happens is when you essentially spawn an item, it checks the type of container it is, and then takes the item types array list, like we said earlier, so if it's like a kitchen or a living room container, then it takes the item types array list and sets it equal to a class called itemList.addKitchenItems, the method, and whatever that returns is what the item types is equal to. Now the thing is with that is that the item list class has a essentially list of items for the kitchen, living room, bathroom, basement, etc., etc. I'll show you guys that in just a sec. But that's essentially how we get the item types array list and how we get it populated. And so then after that, if we look around, back up to the kitchen items, and like I said, that's just how we sort of get that information. But going down a little bit, you can see how we get the index, which is where we randomly pick out, and we use the system.random class, to do that, and then, a lot of errors for a second. We use system.random class, then we get a random number with the boundary of the item's type size. And that random number is what we use to pick out a element from the item types class. So we get an item from the item types class, which is how we just randomly spawn an item. It's not complicated, and I also had to use a system.random if anyone was wondering, because there's an ambiguity between Unity's random class and this random class, because it caused me a little bit of an issue. Not a big deal though. So if we go over to, this is the item list class, and bad practice here, you shouldn't have so many duplicated methods with the same functionality just for like different array lists. This is something I need to clean up, but essentially what this is doing is I've got 2 items, paper towel and bowl, because I couldn't think of more kitchen items. Sue me, I couldn't think of any, it was late. But these are just getting added to the kitchen items array list, which we're adding to just at the top here. And what essentially that is doing is giving us an array list with those like items in it. And I haven't implemented these yet, like the bathroom items, but I have implemented the living room items. Now, this is inefficient also because if I wanted to have, like, let's say 20 items in the kitchen items array list, I'd have to create 20 items, which is like 20 lines of code, and then add 20 items, which is another 20 lines of code. So that's 40 lines of code just to add into the kitchen items array list. And that's just going to be so wonky and gross. I didn't feel like, I feel like there's definitely a better way to fix that. So, yeah, that's pretty much the end of all the code. I really do hope that wasn't too boring. I'm new at this, so if it was, please let me know, and I'll try and spice it up a little bit. I'm sure you guys want more of my memes. I'll try and put more of those in. But that's just about going to do it for me. I have decided that my weekly upload schedule is I'm going to upload on Tuesdays. And next Tuesday, I won't have a video of this devlog coming out. I'll have a video for the game jam that I'm doing, the 8-bit game jam that's starting Friday, I believe March 10th, or April 10th. My god, quarantine time, right? So that will be next week's video, and hopefully you guys like that and are okay with me taking a break from this. But since we're not too deep into the project, I feel like it won't be missed. But yeah, that's about all I have. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.